This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. So the Tshuvas Ksav Sofer brings down the minhag of his father. Ksav Sofer was always to learn Masechta Megillah before Purim. So I don't know if we're going to learn it every week, but even one time we'd be Mekayim the minhag Ksav Sofer. I want to speak out a little Lomdus in Masechta Megillah. We know the first Mishnah says Megillah Nikreis B'Yud Aleph, B'Yud Beis, B'Yud Gimel, B'Yud Daled, B'Tes Vav, Lo Pachos V'Lo Yoser. By the way, on that, there's a remez brought down from the Vilna Gaon and the Shla. You know, if you add up Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Daled, Tes Vav, what do you get? 11 plus 12, 23 plus 13,
36
plus 14,
15
plus 15, 65. Megillah Nikreis, the 65. 65 is Aleph Daled Nun Yud. That's Adnos. That's the Shem Hashem of Adnos. Lo pachos v'lo yoser, not less. Less would be 10. V'lo yoser, not more. That would be 16. 10 plus 6 is what? Yud Kei Vav Kei. There's no Yud Kei Vav Kei in the Megillah. Megillah is only Nikreis be'adnos, 65. Aleph Dal Nun Yud is 65. So you say, but it doesn't say Aleph Dal Nun Yud in the Megillah either. It does. Melech is the midah of Malchus. Melech. Okay. So the Mishnah says that you could lay in the Megillah on 5 possible dates, and then the Mishnah goes through various cheshbonos of how you could lay in the Megillah on these various dates. By the way, there's another remez. You know, the regular days for Megillah is Yud Daled Tesvav. So one of the remezim is Ki Yud al Kes Ka. Yud is Yud Daled, Ka is Tesvav. Okay. But then the Mishnah adds, possibly you could lay in the Megillah the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th. How's that? So the Mishnah says the villagers would enter the bigger cities on Mondays and Thursdays, and we didn't want to be matriach them, and therefore we allowed them to lay in the Megillah on the day of their entry. The Rishonim give different reasons why the villagers would enter earlier, right? So you have Rashi. Rashi says the villagers would enter because they would come in for dinim. The dinim, the Batei dinim, would convene on Mondays and Thursdays, like the Takana of Ezra mentioned in the Gemara Bava Kama Pei Beis. And therefore, since anyway they were coming in for court cases on Monday and Thursday, so he said, once you're coming in, you might as well hear the Megillah then. Why bother them to come in twice? Now, why exactly they were coming in every Monday and Thursday for court cases? Why these villagers had standard court cases every Monday and Thursday? It's a separate discussion. Other Rishonim...
Every villager. There might be villagers that come on a Monday or a Thursday.
Yeah.
So let's talk percentages, right? Let's say you have 50 people living in the villages. So how many people? How many people have court cases? 3.
It's a
few. It's a heter for those who come.
So you mean it's only for the ones who taka come? The rest of them,
Once you make a heter, everyone can use it.
Well, the Ritva says they come in Monday and Thursday for Kriyas HaTorah. The problem is, everyone should have a Gemara, and maybe there are a couple Gemaras, maybe there are 2 regular Shas, and there's 2 art scrolls. Rashi says like this. Rashi says that we allow the Kfarim to enter early, Yom Sheni b'Shabbos, on the Monday before the 14th, or the Thursday before the 15th, Shehu Yom Kinisa, that's the day of entry. Shahakfarim, Miskansim la'ayaros, the villagers enter the cities, l'mishpat. And then Rashi throws out a line, which you have to say that we're not only giving a heter to the people who enter, it has to be for all the villagers. V'hakfarim einam b'kiyim likrois. The villagers, they don't know how to read the Chumash. The villagers were typically amei haaretz, they're ignoramus, and they couldn't lane on their own. They didn't know how to read. And therefore, Rashi says, Utzrichin sheyikra'enu lahem echad mimnei ha'ir. One of the regular city people needed to lane for them. So let's go, right, you got that detail? There are a few details here. Right. Number 1, they're entering anyway. Rashi says they're entering for Mishpat. The Ritva says they're entering for Kriyas HaTorah. Another detail is the fact that the villagers did not know how to lane. That means none of the villagers knew how to lane Kriyas HaTorah. They didn't know how to lane the Megillah. So they needed somebody to lane for them. So let's just spell out the scenario. Yud Daled falls out on a Tuesday. The Monday before is Yud Gimel. The Kafarim, the villagers anyway, they're coming in on Monday. So we say once you're coming in anyway, either for court cases or for Kriyas HaTorah, let's lane the Megillah. So here's the problem. Who's going to lane for them? Rashi says, one of the regular city dwellers who knew how to lane would lane for them. Now think about it. The city dweller For him, it's not Purim today. For him, it's Purim tomorrow. For the villager, it's Purim. So we let the city dweller lane for them. So the problem is, right? We mentioned by Shalshulis yesterday. The Mishnah says what?
Shemei Kohen is the problem.
Someone who is not.
Well, Shemei Kohen.
He's not chayiv.
Right. Kol she'enoi mechuyev b'davar enoi motzi rabim midei chayvasa. So the problem is what?
You're somebody that has a chiyuv.
So conceptually, he's somebody who's mechuyev in the mitzvah. The only thing he's not chayiv today. Right. So who is that? But Rashi learns the Bnei Ho'ir are going to lane for the Kfarim. How could the Bnei Ho'ir lane for the Kfarim? This is what the Ritva discusses. Is this the right one?
Yeah, but we have the same lanes on shop.
Yeah, but a guy can't lane. So there's no shlichus for a guy. A woman. Yeah.
Like kiddush, somebody can make kiddush for somebody else, even though he already was it for himself.
Yeah.
That's because he's mechuyev in kiddush today. The only thing is, he already is exempt.
What about a breast?
But somebody who's not mechuyev ba'isay davar is cannot do the mitzvah.
A man can give a breast, right, and not a woman, because the man is.
Okay, it's a topic. Tzipayra mald Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Okay, so kol she'enu mechuyev b'davar. It's a Mishnah Rosh Hashanah daf chav tes. Kol she'enu mechuyev b'davar, eni moitzes harabim yidei chayvasay. So what does Rashi mean? Utzrichin sheyikrenu lahem echad bnei ha'ir. The bnei ha'ir are not chayiv in the mitzvah. So what would you say?
You not have on that day, right?
Right.
What about someone who lands on Shabbos a few times? He's chayav, but one of
He's chayiv. He's a bar chiyuva. He just fulfilled his obligation. The thing is, in this case, the bnei ha'ir are not bar chiyuva. They're bar chiyuva in the mitzvah in general, but they're not bar chiyuva today. So how could they lane for them?
Who's making the brachos?
Well, the bnei ha'ir or the kfarim, either one.
Because the Megillah wouldn't. It's not something that's us to. It has to necessarily.
You can lane the Megillah every day 5 times. The only thing is, in order to be moitzi somebody the chiyuv, you have to be personally obligated. And on this,
So if he's saying the brachos, would it make a difference if he's saying the brachos or not? So if the bnei ha'ir just have to say the brachos, then he's being.
the brachas is the same issue. If the bnei ha'ir, how would the bnei ha'ir be able to make a bracha if they're not mechuyev in the mitzvah?
So who's making right? So
Who's making
So
it?
the other way, the kfar, people from the kfar, they say the bracha.
Yeah.
The Meir just lanes it.
Read along.
Okay, so the Rabbi Akiva Eiger and the Rabbi Akiva Eiger wrote on Mishnayos, Tosfos Rabbi Akiva Eiger. He understands that Pshat in Rashi, when Rashi says tzrichim sheikrena echem bnei ha'ir, it doesn't mean they lane for them. They don't actually lane for them. They lane. And the bnei and the kfarim repeat. They say they like prompt. In other words, it doesn't mean they're moitzi because you can't be moitzi. Now, maybe you could say that l'maisa the Ritva holds that taka the bnei cannot lane for them. The kfarim have to find somebody, educate somebody to lane, but you can't have a kfari, a bnei ha'ir lane for the kfarim. Could be like this.
But if they find somebody to lane, then why do it early? If they have someone in the kfar who knows how to lane, then wait till actual Purim and lane in the kfar.
So why do they have to come in anyway?
Yeah.
They're coming into the city for din. So,
But the city isn't. There's nothing about the city for Purim. The whole reason they're coming to the city is because they need somebody who knows how to lane in the city.
Because otherwise they won't have somebody to lane.
Right.
I hear. That's good, Ara. Lamaisa, the day Yud Aleph Yud Beis Yud Gimel. We're about to see where do these days come from? Who is Masakin? You could lane 11, 12, and 13.
But we can.
The Chachamim, right? The Chachamim are Masakin. You can lane 11, 12, 13. So they're Masakin that the Kfarim, the villagers, for them they are Bar Chiyuva on 11, 12, 13. So why? Because the Chachamim understand that otherwise, if we're not going to allow them to lane on the day they come in, maybe they'll never lane because this is their only availability. So it's very shaykh. The Chachamim, Heim Amru, V'Heim Amru, they said they could lane today. And they also said that the Bnei Ha'ir, one of them is enough of a Bar Chiyuva to be Moitzi, the Kfarim. Okay, so that's what I want to get into now. The Gemara begins, the first Gemara, Masech the Megillah, says like this. The Gemara asks, how do you know you can lane 11, 12, and 13? And the Gemara says, what do you mean, how do you know? It's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says that we're mekel on the kfarim. By the way, there's a brisa later, and the Gemara deals with this, that the real reason why we allow them to lane early is not because they don't know how to lane. The real reason is because they provided food to the Bnei Ha'ir, right? So who brings breakfast to the Bnei Ha'ir? Everything is the food. It's always the food. Who brings breakfast to the Bnei Ha'ir? It's the villagers. So once they're bringing food anyway on Mondays and Thursdays, so we have Rachmanas on them when we let them lane the Megillah early. So the Gemara asks like this: who made up this halacha that you could lane 11, 12, and 13? In other words, if Anshe Knesset HaGedolah came along and they said, right, you read the Megillah, right? If somebody were to read the Megillah, the only dates mentioned in the Megillah are the 14th and the 15th. Nowhere does it say you could lane on 11, 12, 13. So where did 11, 12, 13 come from? You have to say, the Chachamim allowed it. Well, wait a second, which Chachamim? The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, they were Masaka in the 14th and the 15th. So what, later Chachamim went ahead and said, you know what? You say 14 and 15, we need to make life easier. We'll allow 11, 12, and 13. You can't do that. The Gemara has the following question. The Gemara says that there's a klal, Ein bezdin yachal avato divrei bezdin chaveroi, elam kein gadu imenu b'chacham of a minyan. That a later bezdin cannot change the rulings of an earlier bezdin unless they're greater in wisdom and in number. And therefore the Gemara says you have to say, who made up 11, 12, and 13? Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. When they said 14, 15, they also said 11, 12, 13. Because you can't say it was a later court, because a later court can never override the earlier court unless it's greater b'chacham of a min. You're never going to find a later court that's greater than the Bezdin of Mordechai Esther. And the Gemara asks, 11, 12, 13, you're going to say Mordechai and Esther made. Where in the Megillah does it say 11, 12, 13? And the Gemara finds psukim zmanehem. Zmanehem is mashma, many zmanim, not just 14 and 15. Fine. That means the Gemara holds that if originally the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah made the 14th and the 15th, a later court cannot go ahead and change that ruling, and therefore it must be Mordechai and Esther allowed for 11, 12, 13. So we're going to have two kashas now. Kasha number one is the kasha of the Chassam Sofer. I have a question for you. Let's say Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. So what does the Torah say? Blow shofar. What does God say? Blow shofar. Come the rabbis, and they say, you know what? We're worried that you might find a shofar in the Rishus HaRabim, and you might carry it to a bucky. Yeah, but we live in a city where there's an Erev. Yeah, but you might find it in Flatbush where there's no Erev. Yeah, but Hashem said you have to blow shofar. Yeah, but we're the rabbis. Now, one second, rabbis, you're very great, but are you greater than the Rebbeinu Shalom b'chacham of a minyan? No. But b'shev al tasa, the Chachamim have the right to say that shev al tasa, don't blow shofar today. You'll do it a different time. You do it next year. That means the Chachamim have the power to be oiker davar min haTorah b'shev al tasa. So, frek the Chassam Sofer, if the Chachamim have the power to be oiker a da'iraisa b'shev al tasa, kal v'chomer, they should be able to be oiker the ruling of an earlier bezdin, even if they're not greater b'chacham of a minyan. I mean, what's the logic of this rule? Ein bezdin yachal avatel divrei bezdin chaver, we can't go to men b'chal minyan. If they could be mevatel doiraisas, why can't they mevatel drabanans?
Yeah, but the power given by Kadosh Baruch Hu for a rabbanim to be oiker such a thing like Rosh Hashanah was a power given to the Chachamim. But if the Chacham already made a decision on that issue, a group of later Chacham can't uproot the other Chacham who preceded them. We acknowledge that the power of the Rabbanim is greater than the Torah because of the power invested by the Torah to the Rabbanim, but a later group of Rabbanim can't overpower a preceding group of Rabbanim.
Saying the fact that the Chacham give Oikar Dharma Torah, all that shows is Chachamim are more powerful than the Torah. Exactly, and because they're so powerful, in order to be oiker them, you need to be greater than the earlier court. And the Chassam Sofer basically says something very simple. Chassam Sofer says, well, what's the kasha? Divrei Sofrim are chamer mi divrei Torah. Just because they can be oiker d'oraisa, Isser d'Rabbanan is more chamer than Isser Torah. You hear this? Isser d'Rabbanan is more chamer than Isser Torah. By the way, how much money? Let's say a person would have to lose a lot of money not to violate a d'Rabbanan. How much money do you have to give up not to be over a d'Rabbanan? All your money. All your money. D'Oraisa also, lav also. A mitzvah says say only a fifth, but Nissa D'Rabbanan, all your money. Some Sefer says, so you see from here, that the Rabbanans are more chomer than the Eraisas. You're right, they could be Oiker D'Rabbanan Torah, they can't be Oiker Nissa D'Rabbanan. Mordechai is giving a hezber, for whatever reason they could be Oiker D'Oraisa, fine, they could be Oiker D'Oraisa. But that's because their power is very strong. So the power is very strong, so they can't be Oiker, an earlier decision of a Bezdin. Okay, but here's what I want to focus on. This is the main inyan I want to focus on. There's a Gemara Megillah on Daf Hey Amud Beis. Okay, here, if you have a Gemara, or I'll read to you. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara brings down Amar Rabbi Lazar. This is Hey Amud Aleph on the bottom, going on to Hey Amud Beis. Yeah, the Gemara says like this. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Natan Natiya b'Purim. Rabbi planted a tree on Purim. V'rachatz b'kroina shel tzipayir b'Shavas b'Tammuz. He took a bath on Shavas b'Tammuz. Ubikesh lakar Tisha B'Av, and he wanted to uproot Tisha B'Av. So the Gemara says the rabbis weren't happy with him. They did not agree to him to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. So the Gemara says, Rabbi really wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. How could such a thing be? So the Gemara says, really, what happened was, here's the story. It was the year that Tisha B'Av fell out on Shabbos. And what do you do when Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos? You push it off to Sunday. So Rabbi says, once you're pushing it off, just get rid of it entirely. But the Gemara had a Havamina that Rabbi wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. Comes Tosfos Hamad Bey, second Tosfos. How could the Gemara have a Havamina that Rabbi wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av? Tosfos' second kasha is, who established Tisha B'Av? The Nevi'im, Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. What's Rabbi? Rabbi's a Tana. Ein Bezdin Yachal Avatel Divrei Bezdin Chaveroyim Kein Gadol Mimenu B'Chachma V'Minyan. So how could the Gemara say Rabbi wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av? How would Rabbi have been able to be Oiker Tisha B'Av? He's not greater than the court that established Tisha B'Av. Tosfos gives two answers. First answer is, no, he never wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. All he wanted to do is strip Tisha B'Av of the chumras that Tisha B'Av has over the other Tanesim. So you see from the first answer of Tosfos that this rule that Bezdin cannot be mevatel, a ruling of an earlier Bezdin, is only they can't be mevatel it. But if they want to tamper with it, they want to downgrade it, that they have the capacity to do. But here's the clincher. Here's Tosfos' second answer. This is the Iker Nakuda today. Okay. Inami, says Tosfos, Yesh Loimar, Diratza la'akroi mitshi ulakavai ba'asiri. Rabbi never wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. Rabbi just wanted to move Tisha B'Av to a different date, because the Gemara says at the end of Masechta Tainis that Rabbi Yochanan said that if I were around in the generation that established Tisha B'Av, I wouldn't have made it on the 9th, I would have made it on the 10th. Why would I have made it on the 10th? Because the majority of the Beis HaMikdash burnt down on the 10th. Because actually, if I were to ask you, right, here we come to Shon Tisha B'Av night, I ask you, what happened the night of Tisha B'Av? The answer is nothing. And then we're sitting on the floor Tisha B'Av morning, I ask you, what happened on this date? This date, right? They said, this date, and what happened this date? Nothing. And midday, when everyone's sitting there watching the movies that they made, it's like a mitzvah. What the mitzvahs hayom of Tisha is you have to watch movies. What happened now? Nothing. And then when we get up and we're thinking about when Tisha B'Av is over, what happened? Beis HaMikdash was burnt down. So Rabbi Yochanan said, if I were around, I would have rescheduled Tisha B'Av, not on the 9th, on the 10th. I would reschedule Tisha on them. So what Rabbi means, that Rabbi wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av, he never would have been Oiker Tisha B'Av. He merely would have moved Tisha B'Av from the 9th to the 10th. Wait a second. But when did the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah make Tisha B'Av? On the 9th. And what does Rabbi want to do? He wants to change it to a different date. And that Tosfos says would have been allowed. Ein Bezdin Yachal Avato Divrei Bezdin Chavero. That was Tosfos' question. Tosfos says, no, Rabbi never wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. He merely wanted to slide it down. Apparently Tosfos feels that merely changing the date ever so slightly is within the authority of a later court. No?
Oh, so there's Megillah.
So it's a stira to Daf Beis Amud Aleph, right? Because the Gemara on Daf Beis Amud Aleph asks, you have to say that the 11th, 12th, and 13th were made by the original Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, because you can't say it was made by a later court, otherwise it would be a violation of Ein Bezdin Yachal Lavatel Divrei Bezdin Chaveroi Elam Ken Gadol Menu B'Chacham Minyan. What's the problem? I'll tell you really that Mordechai and Esther only made the 14th and the 15th. And the 11th, 12th, and 13th were made by a later court. Aye, that's a bittul? No, don't you know Tosfos on Hamad Beis says says that merely changing the date is not considered an akira. So one of these got to go. The Gemara has already established that changing Purim from the 14th and 15th to 11th, 12th, and 13th is a violation of Ein Bezdin Yachal Lavatel Divrei Bezdin Chaveroi Elam Ken Gadol Menu Minyan. And Tosfos, to address the question of how Rebbe could have been Oiker Tisha B'Av, Tosfos says, no, he never wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. He merely wanted to ever so slightly change the date from the 9th to the 10th. But that's a problem, Tosfos. The Gemara already established on that base that that's a problem.
10th is still related to Tisha B'Av.
There's a good point, actually.
And the 11th, 12th, and 13th.
It's nothing to do with Purim. So
Nothing happened, right?
nothing happened.
They're sharpening their swords.
Right. It's an arbitrary, it's a later, because of the farmers coming in, the villagers, now we're going to change it. It's nothing to do with Purim.
Yeah, it's convenience.
Could rabbis change a date? Could they not change a date? You say they're only allowed to change a date if there's a good svara. If there's not such a good svara, then they... So if you look in the back of the Gemara, by the way, a lot of Mepharshim ask this kasha. So if you look in the back...
And also, continuing to this point, 9th was done in order to correlate with the first Beis Hamidrash, right?
No, they both started to burn down on the 9th.
Some of the halachas are applying it then.
Yeah. And don't forget World War I started on the 9th.
World War I started, and the Spanish Inquisition started.
But some of the halachas are applying the 10th.
Right.
So it's not a total switch.
No, I thought that's the whole
Right.
point.
The connection
second,
stuff.
to push to the 9th.
Well, you could say the 13th, it's still, because it's Tainus Esther. By the way, the 13th, the fact that you could lay in the Megillah, the Gemara says like this: if you lay in 11, 12, and the 13th, anyway, the Gemara says as far as the 13th is Pashut, you can lay in because it's Man Kihila L'chol, which is also a big sugya. What does it mean, Man Kihila L'chol? That since they gather together to fast and to fight their enemies, it's Pashut, you can lay in the Megillah. So this is the kasha. In the back of the Gemara, two Mefarshim ask the kasha. You have very small in the new Gemaras in the Ois V'Hadar, they group everyone together. All right, they call it Hagois. What is it called? What do they call it? Hagois v'chidushim. They put everyone together. They put the Rashash. They put. I think the Rashash has his own territory on the bottom, right? But all the others, Chacham Asmanayach and the Mayim Chaim. Mayim Chaim was written by the Pri Chadash, Reb Chizkiah di Silva. So he asked this kasha on Daf Hey, how could Tosfos say that merely changing it from the 9th to the 10th is not a violation? You see from Beis Amud Aleph, it is a violation. I wanted to say, maybe, the Gemara on Hey Amud Beis says Rebbe wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. And the Gemara asks, Rebbe really want to be Oiker Tisha B'Av? I said, no, you know what we're talking about? We're talking about where Tisha B'Av fell out on Shabbos, and anyway they were pushing off, and once they're pushing off, Rebbe want to get rid of it. So the Gemara only had a Havamina. The Gemara never said that Rebbe really wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. The Gemara thought that Rebbe wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. To which Tosfos asks, how could the Gemara have thought such a thing, but that's a violation of Ein Bezdin Yachal Davar? So Tosfos says the Gemara thought that because Rebbe only wanted to change it from the 9th to the 10th. So in the Gemara's Havamina, then Taka, the Gemara thought that Rebbe wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av from the 9th to the 10th, and in that Havamina, moving it one day would not be a violation of Ein Bezdin Yachal Davar Bezdin Chaveroi. So you're right, that Havamina would be going against the Gemara. But anyway, the Gemara falls off of it. So it's not such a strong question because the Gemara's conclusion is not that a Bezdin could change the date. It's only what the Gemara thought Rebbe did. So he said, but how could the Gemara have thought that? Shouldn't the Gemara have known? Daf Beis Amud Aleph says that's also a violation. So the Rashash asks this kasha. Let's see if we can find it. It says Rashash l'chor adayin yiksha ha'im bezdin yochel avatar. U'mashu kasav lo yimechuver klal the Rabbi Yochanan lo yoybo isa hadar. So Rashash says v'li nira Rabbi Hayatoila, the Mashakavu Betes Haya Oz Machmas Kilkul Cheshboinos. Kamashakasav HaToisus B'Shem Yerushalmi in Rosh Hashanah. So Rashash wants to say that when Rebbe wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av, it's not the pshat he said, the Anshe Knesset Gdoila made the 9th. And I feel the 10th is more reasonable. No, the pshat is Rebbe thought that they got it wrong. Rebbe thought they got it wrong. How can you say such a thing? How can you say Rebbe thought they got the wrong date? So if you remember in Tosfos in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Tosfos discusses a very interesting thing. We know the second Beis HaMikdash was breached when? On the 17th day of Tammuz. How about the first Beis HaMikdash?
We don't know.
The Navi says that it was breached on the 9th. The Navi says it was breached on the 9th.
Of Tammuz.
Huh?
Of Tammuz.
The 9th of Tammuz. So why do we fast the 17th? So the Bavli says we fast on the 17th because Churban Bayis Rishon is not as chomer to us as Churban Bayis Sheni. After all, we are suffering from Churban Bayis Sheni, not Churban Bayis Rishon. But that's what the Bavli says. The Yushalmi says differently. The Yushalmi says by the first Beis HaMikdash it was also breached on the 17th. But the Navi says the 9th. The Navi got it wrong. Navi wrote the wrong date. How can you say so? They're Nevi'im, they're prophets. The answer is the people got the wrong date because the people were so confused from the Tsaras. The people got the wrong date. And the Navi wanted to preserve the confusion of the time, so the Navi wrote the date the people thought. Avada, the Navi knew the real date. But the people got the wrong date. So Rebbe thought, the Rashash says, that the same thing with Tisha B'Av. Not that he argued on Anshe Knesset. He felt that the establishment of the 9th was incorrect. He felt that it was Machmas Kilkul Cheshboinos. And therefore, in such a situation, that would not be a violation of Ein Bezdin Yachal Avato Divrei Bezdin Chaveroi Elam Ken Gadol Men B'Chomenim. But I'll just leave you off. Let's just leave off with the kasha. Okay? Somebody says, no, you have something to say on Megillah, you have some Lomdus on Megillah. This is an important kasha. The Gemara says on Daf Beis Amud Aleph that to switch the 14th and the 15th to any other date would be a violation of Ein Bezdin Yachal Avato Divrei Bezdin Chaveroi Elam Ken Gadol Men B'Chacham Minyan. And Tosfos on Daf Hey Amud Beis to answer the kasha of how Rebbe was Oiker Tisha B'Av, Tosfos says no, he merely wanted to change the date from the 9th to the 10th. Apparently Tosfos feels changing the date is not a violation of Ein Bezdin Yachal Avato Divrei Bezdin Chaveroi. So hopefully by next Sunday we hope to come up with the Masechta. Wish everybody a wonderful day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.